I never thought I'd be the person sitting across from a divorce lawyer at 38 years old. I had done everything right. College degree, stable career, married at 29 to someone everyone said was perfect for me. We had the house, the 2 cars, the golden retriever named Bailey. From the outside, we looked like we had figured it all out. But here's what nobody tells you about marriage. Sometimes it doesn't end because of infidelity or abuse or some dramatic explosion. Sometimes it ends because you wake up one morning and realize you've been performing a role in someone else's play for nearly a decade, and you can't remember the last time you felt like yourself. Let me take you back to how this all started, because I know what you're thinking. You're probably assuming this is another story about falling out of love or growing apart or maybe even meeting someone else. But that's not what this is about. This is about something much more uncomfortable to talk about. Something that made me question everything I thought I knew about commitment and happiness and what it means to build a life with another person. My ex-husband, let's call him David, was genuinely a good man. He didn't cheat. He wasn't controlling or abusive. He remembered birthdays and anniversaries. He did the dishes without being asked, and split household responsibilities fairly evenly. On paper, he was everything you're supposed to want. Our friends envied us. My mother constantly reminded me how lucky I was. And for years, I believed her. The problem started so quietly I didn't even notice it at first. It began with small things. David loved routine. He loved predictability. Every Friday was Italian night. Every Sunday we visited his parents. Every vacation was meticulously planned, 6 months in advance, with color-coded spreadsheets. And look, I'm not against organization. But somewhere along the way, our entire life became a schedule to maintain, rather than an adventure to experience. I started to feel this tightness in my chest whenever I thought about suggesting something spontaneous. Like the time I wanted to take salsa dancing lessons and he said we couldn't because Thursday was his gym night and it would throw off his whole routine. Or when I mentioned maybe taking a weekend trip somewhere new and he pulled out the vacation spreadsheet showing we'd already allocated our travel budget for the year. But here's where it gets complicated. None of these things alone were deal breakers. They were just little disappointments that I told myself were part of compromise, part of being a mature adult in a long-term relationship. I kept pushing down this growing feeling that I was shrinking, becoming smaller and quieter to fit into the life we had built together. The real turning point came about a year before I ended things. I was offered an incredible opportunity at work, a promotion that would mean more responsibility, more travel, and yes, longer hours. I was excited. Actually, I was thrilled. For the first time in years, I felt this spark of ambition and possibility that I thought I'd lost. When I told David over dinner, his first response wasn't congratulations. It was concern about how this would affect our routine. Who would handle the grocery shopping on Wednesdays? What about our Sunday dinners with his parents? Could I really commit to this when we were supposed to start trying for kids in the next year, according to our timeline? That word. Timeline. We had a timeline for having children. Not a conversation, not a mutual decision that felt right, but a timeline that had been decided years ago, and that I was apparently still expected to follow, regardless of how my career or desires might have evolved. I took the promotion anyway, and David supported it, to his credit. But the resentment was palpable. Every time I worked late, every business trip I took, I could feel his disapproval, like a physical weight. He never said he was angry, but he became passive-aggressive in ways that slowly eroded my joy in the new role. He'd make comments about how we barely saw each other anymore. He'd sigh heavily when I had to reschedule our plans. He started calling my job your hobby, in a tone that made it clear he thought I was being selfish. And here's what really messed with my head. Part of me started to believe him. I started to wonder if I was being selfish, if I was prioritizing my career over my marriage, if I was failing at being a good wife. Because that's what happens when you're in a relationship where your growth is seen as a threat, rather than something to celebrate. You start to internalize that maybe you're the problem. I went to therapy. Individual therapy, because David didn't think we needed couples counseling. He thought I just needed to work through my stress and figure out better work-life balance. My therapist, bless her, asked me a question in our third session that changed everything. She said, "If you could design your ideal life without considering anyone else's opinions or expectations, what would it look like?" I couldn't answer. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, and I realized I had no idea. I had spent so long molding myself to fit into David's vision of what our life should be that I'd completely lost touch with what I actually wanted. I didn't know if I wanted kids. I didn't know where I wanted to live. I didn't even know what I liked to do for fun anymore, because all of our activities were things David had chosen and I had just gone along with. That's when I knew. Not that I wanted a divorce, not yet, but that something was fundamentally broken. I was 37 years old and I didn't know who I was outside of being David's wife. That realization was terrifying. I tried to talk to him about it. I really did. I suggested couples therapy multiple times. I tried to explain that I felt like I was losing myself, that I needed more flexibility in our life, that I wanted us to dream together about possibilities instead of just maintaining our routine. But David couldn't hear it. To him, everything was fine. We had a good life. Why did I want to mess with something that was working? And that's the thing. It was working for him. Our life was perfectly designed around his needs, his preferences, his comfort zone. It had been from the beginning, and I'd been so eager to please, so conditioned to believe that being accommodating was the same as being loving, that I'd never questioned it. The final straw was actually something small. We were at a dinner party with friends, and someone asked me about my promotion, about the projects I was working on. I started to talk about it, genuinely excited, and David cut me off mid-sentence to change the subject. Later, when I asked him why, he said I was dominating the conversation and being boring, that everyone there already knew about my job and didn't need to hear about it again. Something snapped in me that night. I realized that if my own husband found my accomplishments boring and wasn't proud of me, if he actively tried to diminish my excitement and keep me small, then what were we even doing? This wasn't partnership. This wasn't love. This was me playing a supporting role in his life story, while abandoning my own. I asked for a divorce 3 weeks later. David was shocked. He genuinely didn't see it coming. He thought we were happy. And that's the saddest part. He was happy. He had a wife who cooked, who kept the house nice, who went along with his plans, who was slowly giving up more and more of herself to maintain his comfort. Of course he was happy. The divorce was brutal in ways I didn't expect. Not because it was contentious, but because everyone in our life questioned my decision. His family thought I was throwing away a good marriage for selfish reasons. Some of our mutual friends chose his side, believing his narrative that I had changed, become too career-focused, abandoned our plans for a family. Even my own mother asked me multiple times if I was sure, if I had really tried everything, if I wasn't just going through a phase. But here's what I learned through all of it. Staying in a marriage that requires you to continuously shrink yourself isn't noble. It's not what commitment means. Real love, real partnership, should help you grow into the fullest version of yourself, not require you to become less so that your partner can feel comfortable. I'm 40 now, 2 years post-divorce. I live in a smaller apartment in a neighborhood I chose because I love it, not because it was practical or met someone else's criteria. I've traveled to places that weren't on any spreadsheet. I've taken up pottery and discovered I'm actually pretty good at it. I've dated a little, though I'm not rushing into anything. I'm learning who I am, slowly and sometimes painfully. But it's the most important work I've ever done. Do I regret the marriage? That's complicated. I don't regret the early years when I genuinely thought we were building something together. I don't regret what I learned about myself, even though it took me too long to learn it. But I do regret the years I spent making myself smaller. I regret not speaking up sooner, not insisting on couples therapy, not recognizing the red flags that were there from the beginning. If you're watching this and something is resonating, I want you to know that it's okay to want more. It's okay to grow. It's okay to change your mind about what you want your life to look like. And it's okay to leave a relationship that isn't abusive or dramatic or obviously wrong, but that simply doesn't allow you to be fully yourself. Marriage shouldn't be a cage, even a comfortable one. It shouldn't require one person to continually sacrifice their dreams, their growth, their very identity to maintain the peace. That's not compromise. That's not love. That's slow erasure. I ended my marriage at 38. Not because my husband was a bad person, but because staying would have meant abandoning myself. And I've realized that's the worst betrayal of all. The one you commit against yourself when you know something is wrong. But you stay anyway, because leaving feels too hard or too scary or too selfish. It wasn't too selfish. It was the first truly loving thing I'd done for myself in years. And while I can't say the journey has been easy, I can say with absolute certainty that I'd rather build a life that's authentically mine, even if it's messy and uncertain, than maintain a picture-perfect existence that requires me to be anyone other than who I truly am.